Howdy, my totally as always tubular gamers are back with, you guessed it, another video. Thanks for coming back to the channel. Today I got a ranking video for you. We're going to be talking about Doom. Yeah, I'm going to be ranking all the Doom games. It's about time I finally got to it.
So Doom doesn't really need much of an introduction here. It is the daddy of first-person shooters, the big MF in town. When you think of first-person shooters, the first game or series you probably think of is Doom. I mean, it's freaking Doom. It's been around for over 30 years now, and it really is one of the most iconic video game franchises of all time. And today, I'm gonna have the unenviable task of ranking all of the Doom games worst to best. I've been a massive Doom fan my entire life. When I was a young teenager, I finally tried Doom for the first time and I was hooked. I had to play all of the games immediately and have since played through every Doom game multiple times, some of them in the double digits even. I just really do love Doom. When it comes to my favorite first-person shooter series, Doom is near the very top. There's not a bad game in this series, in my opinion. So when it comes to this ranking, I'm going to be stacking these games up against each other, seeing where they excel, maybe where they don't excel, giving each one of them a review. I do have quite a bit to say about really all of these games. I'll really try to give you the lowdown, and I'm not talking about what happens under the table, I'm talking about Doom here. And hey, as always, this is just my opinion based off of my feelings, emotions, thoughts, etc. Let me know down below if you agree or disagree with the list. Let me know if you think I might be cooking here, or as the kids say these days, spittin', skibbity rizzler giot, or let me know if you think I have no idea what I'm talking about and completely disagree. Either way, I'm happy to read any and all comments. For this list, it is worth noting I will be looking at the PC version of each of these games. Doom has always been a PC game first, and yeah, I'm looking at the PC versions. I won't be looking at the mobile games, the weird RPGs. Yeah, I don't really have any experience with those. I don't really have any experience with Doom VFR either, so that's not going to be here. And then when it comes to the DLCs or expansions or mission packs or anything like that, I'm just going to be pairing it with the base entry, with the main entry. For instance, Doom 2, there's master levels for Doom 2. There's even Doom 2 No Rest for the Living. That's all just going under Doom 2. I'm trying to keep things simple here, otherwise we really would be here all day, and look how long this intro is already. And yes, I am aware that this list is going to be outdated in the future since a new Doom game is coming out. Now, while I don't think there is a bad Doom game, I think the weakest of the Doom franchise is Final Doom, which initially came out in '96. And yeah, nowadays Final Doom is paired with Doom 1 and 2, but it was initially a standalone release, and when I bought it on Steam like 15 years ago, it was a standalone game. So yeah, it's getting its own entry, and again, I don't think this is a bad game, but there's a pretty noticeable gap in quality between Doom 1 and 2 and Final Doom. This game was not made by id Software, and was essentially a level pack created by fans, but then id Software stepped in at the last minute and said, hey, we'll actually buy this from you and publish it, and yeah, here we are with Final Doom. Now, despite being the third entry in the Doom series, this very much is not a successor to Doom 2. This is not a Doom 3. The gameplay is basically identical to Doom 2. There's no new weapons or enemies or even environments, really. There's new music, but it's kind of forgettable. What this is, basically, is a giant level pack for Doom 2, introducing 64, yes, 64 new levels that are all as hard as a steel beam. If you are looking for the most difficult Doom levels in an official capacity, you'll find them here in Final Doom. This is really what Final Doom is known for, having just tons upon tons of extremely difficult levels, unnecessarily difficult levels. And while these new levels really are Final Doom's identity, especially at this point, it's also its biggest issue. I don't think the levels are all that good in Final Doom. A majority of them I just did not enjoy. But when it comes to the core gameplay, I mean, it's Doom 2. This is great stuff. You kill everything that moves, you collect some key cards, and then go from level to level. It's really the level design and the length of these levels that just make it not the most enjoyable experience. I don't dislike this game, but I'm not going to say it's all that good. A lot of these levels are just incredibly maze-like, confusing, and just go on way too long. A lot of the time they just focus on putting you in completely unfair advantages, like where you only have a shotgun and you've got to go fight some of Doom's most powerful enemies, and then once they start giving you all the weapons, they just completely overload you with some of the most powerful Doom enemies. Seriously, it feels like the Cyber Demon is almost a common enemy in this game. There's just so many powerful enemies, and it just takes forever to get through some of these levels. The pacing was just not there for me. I'm not going to act like I didn't have any fun with this game. That's not true. I did have some fun with it. I mean, it still is Doom 2's gameplay. It's just, this could have been so much better. It really did not need to be this hard. This is without a doubt one of the most difficult first-person shooters I've ever played. I've played a lot of classic shooters, and I really think Final Doom is more difficult than like all of them. It's just relentless, especially the Plutonia set of levels. Like, these are just ridiculous. They have the most annoying enemies in the worst placements. Those chain gunners are all over the place, and it's just more annoying than anything else. I feel like my playstyle drastically changed, where I'm peeking around every corner, going super slow, trying not to get hit, because you'll just get annihilated by them, and it's like, that's not how you're supposed to be playing Doom. On top of this, it feels like some of the levels can just take an eternity. I'm like, these are overly complex, and it feels like it's just taking forever. I just want to get to the next level. Oh, another 5 chain gunners showed up. Yeah, call it a skill issue, but I didn't think a lot of these levels were all that enjoyable. I kinda get it. Back when this came out, there was a lot of hardcore Doom fans that wanted something super difficult, but I don't know if this was the answer. Coming back to this in current year, I think it's the least enjoyable of the Doom games, and I think the only people that should try it are like the hardcore Doom fans. It seems like it was only made for the hardcore Doom fans, and even then, I don't know if you're gonna enjoy the game all that much. If you're looking for like the most difficult first-person shooter of them all, go ahead and try Final Doom. I didn't say most enjoyable though, and that's why I think it's the weakest of the Doom games. And so here we have Doom 64, which originally released for the Nintendo 64 back in '97, but eventually it was re-released on all modern platforms in 2020, and I'm really glad that it got re-released. I feel like this game was that forgotten Doom game like nobody ever talked about. I mean, it was only on the Nintendo 64 when Doom was always, you know, a PC first series, and it wasn't even developed by id Software. It was developed by Midway. Yes, the same Midway that made like Hydro Thunder.
Hydro Thunder!
But you know what, it's actually pretty good. When it comes to this game's story, it really is the same as the previous few Doom games. All of the older games have a pretty similar story. I probably should have mentioned that for Final Doom, that there is a little bit of story, but at the end of the day, it's just about the Doom guy, the Doom Marine, the Doom Slayer, whatever he wants to identify as, exterminating all of the demons. Just single-handedly wiping them all out. I know in the re-release there are a few new levels and some new story beats that actually do connect it to the older and newer Doom games, which is pretty cool, but I mean, it's just about the Doom guy killing everything. And that's basically the story for Final Doom as well. When it comes to the gameplay of Doom 64, it is very similar to Doom 2. It runs on the Doom engine, but unlike Final Doom, there's actually some new stuff here. First off, the game has completely original assets, so all of the weapons, enemies, and environments do look different from the other older Doom games, and this game does take a very different approach with its art style and aesthetic that really actually gives it its own unique identity and appearance. Like, this game very much can stand apart from the older Doom games. You can tell it's Doom 64. I like how it looked. And it's also a lot darker, kind of giving off horror vibes, but when it comes to the moment-to-moment gameplay, yeah, it's an old-school Doom game. Despite having different assets, the weapons behave mostly the same. Like, there's some minor differences here and there, but if you've played any old school Doom game, you're going to know exactly how this game plays and feels, and it's a good time. You get to just wipe everything out, find some key cards, move from level to level, occasionally find some secrets, and sometimes get your head smashed in, because Doom 64, it's actually decently challenging. Nowhere near as hard as Final Doom, but it's got moments where it can get pretty tough. Something unique to Doom 64 is it actually does have its own exclusive weapon known as the Unmaker, which actually is just a hit scanning weapon, and it uses the same ammunition as the plasma gun and the BFG. I'd rather use the plasma gun or the BFG, but it's cool that this game actually does have its own unique weapon. It further adds to the aura that is Doom 64. Something else that really adds to it is the music. The music is very different from all the other Doom games. It's much more atmospheric and horror focused, and I think it's a unique take on Doom music. I don't think it's anywhere near as good as really any of the other Doom games outside of Final Doom, but it's cool that they took this approach. But hey, at least the levels are pretty decent in this game. I think they're better than Final Dooms, they're more enjoyable, the pacing is better. It doesn't feel like they take an eternity for the most part, and the challenge feels pretty on point. I'm not going to act like these are some of the best levels in any Doom game. They really don't hold a candle to the original 2 Doom games, but I'd still say they were good. I was able to walk away from Doom 64 thinking it was a relatively enjoyable experience. I think it's a solid first-person shooter, and if you like classic FPS games, this is one you should try out. I feel like most people haven't tried it, and now that it's widely available, go out of your way maybe to try it, especially if you like Doom. It offers something a little different from the original few games, and while I know it's not everyone's cup of tea and there are plenty of people that don't really care for Doom 64 and its slower, more atmospheric approach, I can appreciate that they tried something different, and yeah, it's a decent enough game. And here we have Doom 3, which originally released in '04, and I'm throwing in the expansion Resurrection of Evil. Now, Doom 3 is pretty different from all of the other Doom games, and over the years I feel like it's gotten a bit of a bad rap, which is a real shame because despite it being pretty different from the other Doom games, I think it's actually still an incredibly enjoyable experience. I played it way back, like almost 15 years ago, and I thought it was incredibly enjoyable. I also got the shit scared out of me by this game, and I've since gone back and played through it a few more times and the expansion, and yeah, I think it's pretty good still. When it comes to this game's story, it's actually a reboot for Doom. It ignores the older games, and now it ignores the newer games. It really is just its own little timeline. But I mean, at the end of the day, it really doesn't mean all that much. The story is still relatively basic, taking place on Mars. You still play as the Doom Marine, and you kill lots and lots of demons. There are some more characters, there's actually a decent amount of world building and plenty of logs you can read to just flesh everything out, but I'm not going to act like it's amazing stuff here. It's just kind of there. If you want to read it, if you want to learn about the world and the characters and what's going on here, you can, but I feel like most people are just kind of going to ignore it and go and kill some demons. So speaking of killing demons, when it comes to Doom 3's gameplay, it's quite different from any other Doom game. The first thing you'll notice, it's a lot slower and the enemy count is a lot lower. Rather than zipping around these levels like a bat out of hell, you actually move quite a bit slower here. I'd say you move at a normal pace for a first-person shooter. It's just for Doom, yeah, that is pretty slow. You also don't get absolutely swarmed by enemies like you would in other Doom games. Sometimes a good amount of enemies show up, but it's never like a dozen at once. The game is a lot more closed off and corridor focused. The game's actually quite a bit claustrophobic. That really plays into what Doom 3 was going for. Everything I just mentioned plays into what Doom 3 is. It's not just a first-person shooter, it's a horror first-person shooter. That's why it's got a slower speed, that's why it feels so claustrophobic, that's why it's so damn dark, and it's why you don't get just ass blasted by enemies. They really build up every enemy showing up. They take up most of the corridors, and it feels like the encounters are a lot more planned out and methodical. I thought this game was scary as hell the first time I played it. It was so dark, I've got the little flashlight, and all of a sudden some demons show up. Yeah, it scared me. Nowadays, it doesn't really scare me, especially since I've played through this game so many times, but I can still appreciate that it is such a different approach for Doom, but it kind of works actually. I feel like there actually is a certain level of tension and atmosphere that the game is able to achieve, especially if you're playing a version where you can't hold a gun and a flashlight at the same time. I always thought this was a bit stupid, and it never really made all that much sense, but I feel like it genuinely does add to the game. When you're walking around with just this little dingy flashlight and all of a sudden a demon jumps out of the darkness and you gotta quickly switch to your gun and try to kill it, yeah, it's tense. And I feel like it was those moments where I was the most scared. I know subsequent re-releases added the duct tape mod where it's just attached to your character and you can hold a gun and use the flashlight at the same time. And while this is more practical and makes more sense in the context, I feel like when you play through the game this way, some of the tension really is lost, and the game's not as scary as it is when you're just holding that dumbass flashlight out. But hey, you know what they say, different strokes for different folks. When it comes to the gunplay of Doom 3, I actually think it is pretty solid. A lot of the classic Doom weapons return, and they're just as great as ever, like the shotgun. The shotgun absolutely fucks in Doom 3, but there are a few new weapons here. I think the guns feel nice, it's satisfying, and when you put some of these fuckers down, oh yeah, it feels good, especially after they just scared the crap out of you. I'm not going to act like it's anywhere near as satisfying as plenty of the other Doom games on this list, but I think it's still pretty good, even nowadays. And I think the moment-to-moment gameplay actually holds up incredibly well. Something that I don't think holds up incredibly well is the pacing and the level design. I remember Doom 3 was a bit slower, not just when it comes to the gameplay, but the pacing, and coming back to this game, yeah, I forgot that it's a bit sluggish. A lot of the game is spent in this giant Mars base, and it feels like you're here for quite a while. I mean, you're here a majority of the game, and it's fine at first, but it starts to feel a bit samey and even a little repetitive by the end of it. And the level design really doesn't help things out. It's just straight corridors for the most part. I feel like there isn't enough unique areas or set pieces to keep things interesting or all that engaging. And you can only be scared by the demons in the dark so many times. But eventually you do leave the base and it continues to pick up, the pacing gets better, and you kill a lot more demons in the last half. And I'm not saying that the level design or the pacing is necessarily bad, it's just it could have been a little better. There's also the expansion Doom 3 Resurrection of Evil, which was not developed by id Software, but I'm just throwing it in here, and I actually quite like Doom 3 Resurrection of Evil. I even like it a bit more than base Doom 3. It's not as scary as Doom 3. They throw a lot more enemies at you. You're in a lot more open environments, and the pacing is just a lot better. It's like half the length of Doom 3, but you kill just as many, if not more, demons. It feels much more in line with the other Doom games. It still is slower, and it still is a bit more atmospheric. And it still has a few scares, but I just found the gameplay to be more enjoyable. You also get the super shotgun, and yeah, this thing absolutely destroys. Now, something that was really hyped up for Doom 3 and Resurrection of Evil was its presentation. Yeah, the game might be dark as shit, but when you actually get to see it, it is a very good looking game, especially for 2004. Like this, along with Far Cry and Half-Life 2, were some of the best looking games ever for the time, and even nowadays, it's still a good looking game. Sure, the human characters look a bit uncanny and blocky, and the demons can look a little funny, but the environments and the lighting is still very well done. The lighting in particular, that's some good stuff. When it comes to the sound design, it's also pretty good. The music is not like the other Doom games where it's all heavy metal or rock or going crazy. It is, again, more atmospheric to fit the horror tone, or there's just no music at all. But at least the main theme is a banger. The demons make some pretty terrifying noises, and that contributed to me getting the crap scared out of me. The guns, though, oh, they all sound real good. There's a nice amount of kick to them, especially the shotguns. Overall, Doom 3 is clearly not everybody's cup of tea when it comes to Doom. I know plenty of people don't like the more horror focus, they don't like that it's slower or the corridors, and they just wish it was like the other Dooms. Well, it's not like the other Dooms. Let's focus on what we have instead of what we don't have. And what we have here is a pretty good first-person shooter. I've enjoyed it for many years now, and I'll continue to enjoy it. I think there are other Dooms that are better, but that doesn't discount that I still think this is a pretty good game, and I really got no problem recommending it, especially if you like shooters or horror games. And so here we have it, the Doom that started it all, the original, releasing back in 1993. While it was originally only on the PC, Doom is probably the most ported game ever. I really can't think of a game that is on more devices than Doom. People have put it on calculators, they even put it on the ordering screen at McDonald's. I think the only game that could rival it is like the original Sonic the Hedgehog. But anyway, the original Doom. What's there even left to say about it at this point? It was a landmark title for first-person shooters, and it doesn't matter if it's 1993, 2003, 2013, 2023, current year, it's still a fantastic first-person shooter that is still a ton of fun. It holds up in basically every aspect. When it comes to the presentation, sure, it looks dated, but it's still got an incredible charm to it. Seeing the Doom guy's face down there will never not get old. And this game is just filled to the brim with legendary sprites at this point, whether it's the Pinky or the Cyber Demon or even just the other normal enemies. Like, I love how this game looks. The aesthetic is just timeless at this point. And the gameplay is basically timeless, especially nowadays when there's so many boomer shooters. There's more boomer shooters releasing than AAA shooters, and so Doom, yeah, Doom just fits right in. Where you're dropped into these sometimes decently sized levels and are told to just get to the end of the level. Along the way, there's going to be plenty of demons to try to stop you, and you'll even have to collect some key cards. You'll have to collect a key card to go unlock a door or a switch or an elevator, so then you can continue on in the level. And even for the time this wasn't considered innovative, Wolfenstein 3D basically had the same thing, but Wolfenstein 3D was very flat. Doom actually had some verticality to it. Doom also wasn't maze-like with its levels. Sure, a few levels can get pretty complex, but nowhere near as complex or annoying or frustrating as Wolfenstein 3D. In fact, the levels are pretty good. You won't be too lost, and there's plenty of demons to shoot. And when it comes to the gunplay, sure, it might look relatively primitive nowadays, but it still is incredibly satisfying. The weapons are just beyond iconic, not only visually, but how they feel and the noises as well. I mean, the weapon roster low-key influenced the entire genre, where there's like some melee weapon. In this case, you have your fist and the chainsaw. There's a shitty pistol, a shotgun, a chain gun, a rocket launcher, the plasma rifle, and the BFG, the big fucking gun. Yeah, the weapon roster's just kind of goated, and all of the weapons are useful outside of the shitty pistol. But you get plenty of things to kill. There's a variety of enemies here, from the grunts to the demons to some of the stronger demons. but they all really have the same attack pattern. The moment they see you, they're either going to make a beeline for you or start attacking, or usually both. So you got to kill them before they kill you. But you do have to contend with a little bit more than just the demons. These environments are pretty hazardous as well. There's all these exploding barrels, and then there's a bunch of chemical waste all over the place that you're going to have to dodge. Mars is a pretty dangerous place. Oh yeah, this game takes place on Mars. There actually is a bit of plot to this game, but it's about as basic as you would expect. Despite the game being split up into episodes, they basically all have the same story. The Doom Marine is sent onto Mars to just annihilate all the demons. That's pretty much it. And I mean, it makes sense. At the time, games didn't have a ton of story, and this game doesn't either. This game does have a pretty kick-ass atmosphere though, that still totally holds up, and the music is just, I mean, the music is just as legendary as it gets. E1M1 is one of the most iconic tunes of any video game, but the whole soundtrack is legit very good. The original Doom in general is very good. I know, crazy thing to say in current year, but Doom still holds up. It's still a ton of fun. There's plenty of ways to play it nowadays, and it's one of those games I think everybody, truly everybody, should experience at some point. There's been a ton of additions to Doom as well, in the form of levels. Stuff like Sigil 1 and 2 were there. There's just endless, and I mean endless mods. There's multiplayer, there's co-op. Doom is eternal. There's just seemingly always going to be content and stuff being made for the original Doom. It's been 30 plus years and people are still making shit for Doom, and some of it's in an official capacity. It doesn't really matter how many times I've played through this game, I can still boot it up and have a great time with it. The first time I played it, oh, I was hooked and I beat the whole game in like 1 or 2 sittings. Nowadays, I know some of these levels like the back of my hand and I can actually finish them pretty quick. I'm not, you know, speed running levels of good, but I can make my way around a few of these levels if you know what I'm saying. What I'm trying to really say at the end of the day though is, if you can breathe air, then I really think you owe it to yourself to try Doom at some point, if you haven't already. And so here we have Doom, the 2016 game specifically. Now, I was very, very excited for this game. First new Doom game in over a decade, and it looked to be nothing like Doom 3. It looked like it was the older Doom games, but in the modern era, and that's absolutely what it was. They really took the old Doom games and brought it to the modern day. This game really was the start of the boomer shooter era for first-person shooters. Like, when it comes to FPS games, there was a clear pre- and post-Doom 2016 in terms of the games that got released. And it's all due to just how good this game was. It really feels just like the older Doom games, but also modern in all the right ways. It feels more like an old-school Doom game than even Doom Eternal does. And I remember when this game came out, oh, I played it non-stop. I beat it in like 2 days. I loved it. And then I went back and played through the whole thing again. Like, it was just that good. And all these years later, oh, it is still so good. This game is just a ton of fun. When it comes to the premise or setup for this game, it really isn't all that different from the older Doom. You play as the Doom Slayer, who awakens from a deep sleep and is tasked with just killing all of the demons on Mars, I guess. There is a bit more to the story. There's actually some characters and a good amount of world building. But the general gist is, kill all the demons, ignore Samuel Hayden, fuck around and find out. There's actually quite a bit of lore to this game if you really want to delve deep into it, and I think that's pretty cool that if you are interested in the backstory and the characters in World of Doom, they absolutely have stuff for you. But I think most people probably just ignored it and said, I want to kill all the demons. And when it comes to the gameplay, oh, it is top tier here. It is so good. The first thing you'll notice is that this game is a lot faster than Doom 3. It moves at a pretty brisk pace, and you're going to want to be moving the entire time. You can hold all of your weapons at once, just like the older games, and you can absolutely fuck shit up in this game. A bunch of the classic weapons return, and they feel even more powerful than ever, especially the chainsaw. It just absolutely rips through shit. And speaking of the ripping and the tearing, this game introduces the glory kills, where you just absolutely execute some enemies. When you do enough damage, you can just do a finishing move where you just pummel the shit out of them and you get rewarded with ammunition and health and armor, and ooh, it is a lot of fun just completely destroying everything, doing all of these glory kills. Like, it's just an immediately satisfying, engaging combat loop that really never gets old. 2 or 3 playthroughs in and it still hasn't gotten old for me. Like, all of the classic enemies return. You can do some pretty sweet executions on all of them. Some of them mix things up a bit, but the combat in general is just some of the best you'll find legit in any first-person shooter. Outside of the combat, there's actually a bit to see as well. While it is quite linear, some of these areas are actually very open. There's a lot to see and explore. There's tons, and I mean tons of Easter eggs in here, referencing older Doom games, Commander Keen, Skyrim, Fallout, a bunch of other Bethesda stuff. Finding these Easter eggs are great, and the secrets usually reward you as well. There's actually some platforming here. And of course, from time to time, you'll have to search for this little thing called a key card. You're probably pretty familiar with those. What I can appreciate is that when you're not in combat, it doesn't feel like downtime or the game's spinning its wheels, forcing variety on you. All of it feels natural. The way you progress through these levels is really great. There's 13 levels and there's really not a bad one here. The pacing in general is just superb, and they all feel decently different from each other. The other thing about the gameplay is it's just so much fun. I don't really have any other way to describe it. It's just immensely fun. The combat loops are so satisfying and rewarding, and it's just such a good time. The game is able to stay engaging throughout its entire runtime, and I'm certain that most people finished the game and then booted it back up because it was so much fun, and it really just never gets old. If you like first-person shooters and have not tried Doom 2016 or its sequel, I really don't know what you're doing. First-person shooters don't get much better than this, especially in the modern era. And one reason it's so good is the presentation. The presentation, especially for 2016, was absolutely fantastic. This game looks great. It runs at a very smooth 60 frames per second. The environments look solid. The lighting's great. And then it's so gory. This is a violent, gory, brutal game that makes you feel like an absolute badass. In most games, you fight a boss that can just absolutely kick the shit out of you. In Doom 2016, you are the boss. You're the one kicking the shit out of the demons, and it makes you feel like the coolest dude on Earth. Actually, it would be the coolest dude on Mars. You're not on Earth. It was a fucking figure of speech, okay? What I'm trying to say is there's not that many games that make you feel like this much of a badass, and that's thanks to the gore, the presentation, and the sound. The sound is so good. The ripping and the tearing, oh, it sounds so good. The weapons sound ultra powerful, and the music is really great stuff here. One of the most badass and unironically epic soundtracks to any video game. It's really great stuff. If you couldn't tell, I love Doom 2016. I think this is a phenomenal game that really should be tried by everybody. Like, if you've ever had even a mild interest in shooters, try Doom 2016. It's not as fast and crazy as Eternal, and it can feel even a little slow at times if you're coming back to it from Eternal, but I still think it's an excellent game that is totally worth your time. And I know there are a lot of people that actually prefer Doom 2016 to Eternal and some other Doom games, and while I personally don't think it's the very best of the Doom series, I can totally understand why. This game, outside of the shitty multiplayer, is just stellar. And so here we have Doom Eternal, which released in 2020. I very much remember the day this game came out. It came out the same day as Animal Crossing. It was right when COVID was starting, and even though we were all quarantining, I gotta say, we were eating real good with video games, and that's because Doom Eternal, oh, this is just one of my favorite games of all time. I love this game the moment I booted it up. And dozens upon dozens of hours later, oh, I still absolutely love this game. So it is a sequel to the 2016 game. It sees the Doomslayer trying to end Hell's consumption of Earth. Yes, it is literally hell on Earth like Doom 2. And the Doomslayer really just has to save everybody. The story is a bit more prevalent than Doom 2016, but it's actually pretty good. But I'll also say it doesn't really ever get in the way of the gameplay. You can kind of just ignore it all if you want to, but there's a ton of story and characters and world and lore if you want to learn more about Doom and everything Doom related, and I think it's really cool stuff. It's cool how much effort was really put into the lore and the world, and this game just has a ton of funny moments to it where the Slayer just shows everyone that, yeah, they are the shit. I like the story, I like where everything goes, and I think it's pretty cool how you can learn a bunch about the Doom world. When it comes to the gameplay, yeah, they took Doom 2016 and really just put it on crack. This game is way faster than Doom 2016. And I think the best way to describe it is that it's just fucking nuts. Like, it's one of the fastest video games I've ever played. Everything moves at a blistering speed in this game. Your character moves hella fast. You can do this little shift, which you can even do in the air. The enemies move fast. Your projectiles are fast. The glory kills are even faster than ever. This game just has this crazy fast tempo to it, and it really never lets up. It only gets faster and faster the more you play this game. So if you're someone with pretty slow reflexes, or you're like me who has the reflexes of like a 43-year-old meth head, this game will really whip you into shape. It's also quite a bit more challenging than the 2016 game, mostly due to the speed. If you're standing still, you might as well just be fucking dead. But anyway, the moment-to-moment gameplay is a blisteringly fast first-person shooter where you basically just annihilate everything that moves. Like, all of the weapons return from the prior game, you even get a few new weapons, and you can just absolutely slaughter everything with these. All of the weapons are great, and even some of the returning weapons are a bit different. Like, the shotgun has a grappling hook attached to it, and I'm sorry, this will just never not get old. Like, I don't know who thought of this, but this was just an amazing idea, and it's so much fun to use. You also get like this flamethrower known as the flame belch that you can shoot out at times. There's grenades and bombs, and of course a bunch of glory kills and executions. There's tons of new executions here, and they're just as satisfying as the prior game. Speaking of what you'll actually be executing, there is way more demons than the prior game. There's actually almost twice as many enemies out here. They all have different tactics, and some of them can absolutely rock your shit. When it comes to this game's weapon and enemy roster, it is so good. It's like this sandbox where you have all these weapons and options to kill just so many different enemies, and it really makes almost every encounter feel fresh, varied, and different from the last. Even when you're replaying the same encounter over and over, it feels different like every single time. There's just so many different ways to go about maiming everything that it never gets old. It's immensely satisfying when it comes to the combat. The combat loop might be the best of any modern first-person shooter. It is unbelievably good. There's all this new movement tech as well, where you can do the dashes to help add to the speed and get out of tight situations. There's wall climbing. You can even swing from these bars. Like, you could just fly all over the damn place. It gets so frantic and crazy, and again, it's just so much fun. When you're not in combat, there's actually a bit of exploration and a good amount of platforming. Thanks to the new movement tech, there's actually a decent amount of platforming that is here, and while some people don't like it, I actually quite do. I think it adds to the variety, it breaks things up nicely, and I never found it all that obnoxious or intrusive, and it never goes on that long. It's maybe a few minutes at most, and then you're back to killing things, and it's just as fun as ever. I don't mind the platforming. I know some people also don't like the speed and feel of the combat, thinking it's less like the older Dooms in 2016 and more like this just cracked out first-person shooter that goes nuts, but I just could not get enough of the combat loop in this game. Like, inject that shit into me all day, fam. I just wanted more and more of this combat. I find myself coming back to this game just to do more ripping and tearing and more of the combat. It's just so much fun. I can only say it so many times, but like, it's just so much fun. And then of course there's a little bit of exploration. There are some secrets to find, but you'll find yourself wanting to replay these levels a bunch. The level design is pretty good. The game's got a good length to it. The pacing is very good. And I found myself thoroughly engaged the entire time. There wasn't a dull moment to this game. Even when you're in the Fortress of Doom, the new hub area where you can like upgrade your gear and look at some of the stuff you've collected and of course choose older missions. I actually think this is pretty cool and it's a good hub area. When it comes to the presentation, I mean, just look at it. It looks fantastic. It looks even better than the 2016 game. The demons look great. They look really great when they get ripped apart. This is a gory, violent game, and yeah, it just looks really good. The humans look good. The environments and lighting are absolutely killer, and then the soundtrack is just goated. It's one of the best soundtracks to any video game ever. I love the soundtrack to Doom Eternal. It is crazy good. Like, I just want to listen to some of it right now, honestly. It is that good. I love the soundtrack to this game. I love basically everything about Doom Eternal. It's one of the greatest first-person shooters ever made, and it shows that Doom really is the king of first-person shooters. It is the big kahuna. It's like at the top of the mountain. It's so good. If you have not tried it at this point, and you even kind of like first-person shooters, I think you should give Doom Eternal a shot. I think you're going to enjoy it. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of people that don't enjoy Doom Eternal or don't love it as much as certain other Doom games, but we can all agree that it's still a pretty fun time, right? And then there's the DLC, the Ancient Gods Part 1 and 2, and this is some of the best DLC for like any FPS. The first episode is actually really difficult, like shockingly difficult. The second episode is a bit more balanced, and I like the second one a bit more, but this DLC, oh, it's also very good. Look, I've been gushing about Doom Eternal for several minutes now. It's pretty obvious how I feel about it. I think everybody should go try it at some point. It's such a good time. And then we have Doom 2 Hell on Earth, originally releasing for the PC in 1994. Doom 2 is not only my favorite of the Doom series, but maybe my favorite first-person shooter of all time. I've played a lot of FPS games, but none of them have hooked me as deep as Doom 2 has. Call it my nostalgia or fond memories, but I just love this game to pieces. I've played through this game like a dozen times, and it never gets old. Sure, while the new Doom games are graphically superior, they're way more violent and satisfying, there's just something about Doom 2 that makes me say, hey, I think this is still the best Doom game. I absolutely love the other Doom games, but Doom 2, this game just hits different. When it comes to the story, it's hell on earth. The demons have gone to Earth to take over and the Doomslayer shows up to save the entire planet. Pretty simple stuff. When it comes to the gameplay, it very much is a sequel to Doom. It plays just like Doom, where it's a fast-paced first-person shooter that sees your character getting dropped into these somewhat large environments and told to just kill everything and get to the end. Along the way, you'll find plenty of key cards to open doors, switches, elevators. You know how this shit goes. There's plenty of different demons to stop you though. All of the weapons return from the original game, but there is one new addition, the Super Shotgun. This double-barrel shotgun is one of the greatest guns to ever be in any video game. It is so great and it's so much fun to use. The combat is just as enjoyable as it was in the original Doom. It feels even better. There's new enemies here, and sure, it's not as dynamic or varied as say Doom Eternal, but it's just so much fun still. Something else that makes Doom 2 as great as it is the levels. The levels are just such a massive improvement over the original Doom that it's crazy, at least in my opinion. I love the levels to Doom 2. These are like my favorite levels of any first-person shooter. They actually get way more intricate than the first game and have a lot more depth and complexity, but it doesn't go crazy like Final Doom. The game's actually very good at like funneling you through certain paths. Some of these levels are also a bit non-linear. They're actually rather open, and I always thought this was the coolest thing when I played this as a teenager, and even nowadays I actually still really do enjoy these levels. Man, thinking back to the first time I played this game, I beat it in almost one sitting. I just could not put it down. I was like, this game is so good, and I've played through it so many times since. And just like several other Doom games, it just doesn't ever get old. It is just such a fun time. The pacing is superb, the level design is great, the combat is excellent. Sure, when it comes to the graphics, you know, obviously it's not the most graphically impressive thing these days. It looks virtually identical to the original Doom, but it was good for the time. The soundtrack, the soundtrack is so good in this game though. It might even be better than the first game. Sure, it's not as iconic, there's no E1M1, but I love the soundtrack to this game. All of the sound effects are great in general. The sound is just really solid. This game has a really great tone and atmosphere as well. It feels very different from the first game, especially because you are on Earth. It's not Mars or hell, it's actually earthly places. There's like normal looking buildings, and I always just thought the tone, the setting, all of that was really great stuff. And then just like the original, this game has been re-released several times. It's on just about every platform imaginable, and there's been a bunch of expansions for it. There's also tons of mods and fan levels. People are making just about as much content for Doom 2 as they were for Doom 1. This game though has some pretty great expansions. The most recognizable one is probably Master Levels for Doom 2, which is the version of Doom 2 I always play these days, where it's all the levels from Doom 2, but they actually throw some extras in there that are pretty challenging, and it's not Final Doom crazy, but it can get difficult. It's a welcome challenge, and some of those levels are actually pretty intricate, but throughout the years there's been other expansions. There was No Rest for the Living, which was developed by Nerve Software, but it was under the direction of id Software, and this was for the Xbox 360 release of Doom 2, and these levels, yeah, they're solid enough. The most recent expansion actually came out in 2024. Yeah, it's 2024 and Doom 2 is still getting an expansion. It was Legacy of Rust, which was developed by id Software along with Night Dive Studios and Machine Games, and yeah, these are some pretty great levels. It's more Doom 2. How could you not love it? Like, there's a reason that so many people are still playing Doom 2 even nowadays. It's got all the hallmarks of just a certified classic that I think everybody should try. If you've ever been interested in a first-person shooter, video games in general, give Doom 2 a shot. It's available on everything. Yeah, it is pretty old now, and I'm sure there are plenty of people that will look at this and go, oh, that's too crusty, that's too ancient, I don't want to play that. Just give it a shot. You'll be shocked at how well it actually has aged and how well it does hold up. Again, while it doesn't go as nuts as Eternal or 2016, this is my favorite Doom. It's like always been my favorite Doom, and it might continue to be my favorite Doom for a very long time. Unless the Dark Ages turns out to be the best one, which I'm really excited for. Like, I'm really excited we're getting another Doom. It's been just way too long. We need some more fucking Doom, because Doom, oh, it's so good. Doom is just a fantastic series in general. Maybe the best series of first-person shooters ever. Like, what can even top Doom? Genuine question. Like, there's plenty of other amazing first-person shooter series, but I don't know if like any of them are better than Doom. Big motherfucker indeed.
And that's it for today's video. Did you agree with it? Did you disagree? Did you really disagree? Let me know down below. But if you made it to this part of the video, you should comment our code word, Cyberdemon, as in, you know, the Doom enemy. That's the code word you made it to the end of the video. Hope I see that down below. You'll get a heart from me. Stay safe, y'all.